Lowest tier, we have free. This is going to be the easiest matchups for Ambessa top. Above that, we have Ambessa favored, that you're going to win most likely 60% of the time, let's say. Skill matchups are going to be 50-50, depending on who's the better player with their champion, mechanics, jungle, that sort of thing. Above that, we have spam ping jungle. These are going to be a little bit harder matchups. You're probably going to win 40% of the time. But again, you could win these. These are turntables matchups. Kind of depends on how you play, how they play, sort of thing. Orney into traffic. These are going to be probably, I'd say, your permaban pool. These are going to be the hardest hardest matchups for Ambessa. We're going to go ahead and start with Volibear. Volibear is an interesting one because it kind of depends on how the Volibear plays. If he goes a more aggressive build with PTA Ignite, it's a little bit harder. But if he goes like TP, Grasp, that sort of thing, it could be Ambessa favorite. I would put this matchup in skill. But it also depends again on how he plays. So it could be down here and it could be up here. It depends on the Volibear and how aggressive he goes. For Rengar, I would say Rengar is Ambessa favored. This is definitely a matchup where it's a really lethal early game. It's going to be super aggressive because Rengar's going to play bushes level 1, level 2, level 3. And it kind of depends on how you trade. I would just say try to stay out of his leap range from bush. And as long as you have electrocute, you should be able to take favorable trades and then win the lane from there. Kale is free. If you go electrocute, this matchup is free. Even Grass, she can't really do anything pre-6. And even post-6, like you have the damage to burst, and then you also have the dashes to get out of her ult range, and then get out of her auto range as well. It should be a pretty free matchup, even in lower elos. Generally, this tier list is going to be for, I'd say, Emerald Plus, like people that know how to pilot their champions. But it also can be, it's pretty general. This isn't like a high elo Ambessa top tier list or anything like that. For Varus is interesting. I would probably put Varus. I'd probably put him in spam ping. Varus is pretty tough. He's really strong as a top laner right now, and it's not good for Ambessa at all. Like he can zone you from level 1, but if you go D-Shield, Grass, second wind, it's survivable, and you can definitely still win the game because you outscale. But it's a pretty tough matchup. I'd probably put this one in spam ping. Fiora's pure skill. I mean, it's kind of like how Fiora is with most champions, but besides tanks, she counters hard. But for non-tanks, it's pretty much always going to be skill matchups with her. For Ambessa specifically, it's an even matchup. I think it kind of depends on how you play and how they play, but it can go either way. Darius is one you'd think would be really hard for Ambessa, but actually it's really not. I think you have the tools to beat his kit. I would put it in Ambessa favored, and it's going to be one that people are going to struggle with if you're a lower elo Ambessa player for sure, because you're not going to use your dash as well, and that's the biggest thing with Ambessa to Darius is using your dash as well. Sometimes you would think, okay, I'm going to dash into his Q, but you don't always want to do that. Sometimes it's best to actually take the Q, but be able to dash out with the timing of it, because if you dash into his Q, sometimes he has the time to then E cancel your second dash, and then you're ruined. Jace is going to be spam ping. Jace is a tough matchup. He's really strong as a top laner generally, especially into Ambessa. It's not a favorable matchup, but it's not impossible. It's definitely not Orney. I would say this one's definitely one you outscale in the late game. You have more utility to the team, so you definitely have potential there to still win the game. But as far as lane goes, it's really hard. Sandra, you're not really going to see. Rise is tough. In higher elos, Rise can definitely be pretty oppressive. But generally, I'd say it's a skill matchup. It's kind of like Ambessa is not favorable into some range matchups, but generally she's not bad into most range. So I'd say it's a skill. You can still play this lane for sure. Quinn's also going to be skill. If you go electrocute, it's definitely doable. You can go electrocute ignite if you want that early game kill pressure. It's definitely doable. She's probably going to go PTA ignite as well. So it's going to be a really volatile lane, but I'd say most of the games I've had, I tend to come on top. I think that generally for most people you would also be able to. Yeah, I'd say skill matchup for her. Sion's an interesting one as well. Most of the time tanks are going to be free, but Sion right now is really, really inflated. I think it's Ambessa favored, but Sion definitely still has potential here. If you get hit by a Q and a W into a W, your lane is critically ruined. Yeah, I'd put it in Ambessa favored for sure. I mean, you're gonna win this lane most of the time. You can kind of go whatever runes you want. You can go electrocute, you can go conquer, you can go grasp. I kind of have personal preference here, but it's definitely like late game. You win this late game obviously, but early game he's really strong right now, so it's definitely a lane where you could lose. Kane. Kane's actually not as easy as you'd think. Kane top is pretty strong, and if he can always get the proxy off an Ambessa, and then you're kind of you can't really do anything about it. Kind of just need to play with your jungle. I would say as far as the lane 1v1 goes, I would put Ambessa favored for sure. I mean, until he gets Raster blue, it's definitely a lot easier. Your favorite for sure in the matchup. You can kind of go whatever build you want into Kane. You could go Eclipse, you could go Lethality. I would just go based on the rest of the enemy team comp. Gnar is going to be skill. Yeah, I'd say skill. Higher elos is a little higher, with people knowing how to pilot Gnar better, but I'd say skill generally. Zac, yeah, there's not a whole lot of tricks with Gnar. It's kind of just a matchup where you can pretty much. I say most of the games I end up playing against Gnar, it's normally just typically scaling until late game without a super crazy volatile early game as compared to like Quinn or Jace, which are probably going to be a little more volatile. Gnar is normally a lot chiller. Zac, you might see Zac occasionally. It's Ambessa favored for sure. I would go Conqueror in this lane. I would go Conqueror D-Blade. I would definitely take some early trades. Just play. Obviously, if you get hit by the E, I mean, that's illegal. You can't let yourself get hit by the E. If you do, it's not good because he gets like 3 or 4 blobs off of it, and he gets a max game healing. Yasuo, this one's really interesting. I would recommend in Yasuo, I would go Flash Ignite and Electrocute because you really do want that early game pressure because most Yasuos tend to be extremely aggressive in the early game with Lethal Tempo, Flash Ignite because that's like level 1 and level 2 are going to be some of their strongest points in the game. I would put Yasuo... It's a tough matchup, honestly. I would put him in spam ping jungle because he's one of the few champions that can actually still stick to you if he uses E well. It's not a good matchup. It's not fun. It's not a great matchup for you at all if he sticks to you with E. He has way more DPS than you do. Camille. Camille's tough as well. It's leaning. It's between these two tiers. I think right now Camille's pretty weak. I'm gonna say Ambessa favored. I think right now it's a matchup that's winning for you. With the early game Q bust we got, it really helped to neutralize this lane. And you can kind of cut out Qs with your dashes, and it leads to favorable situations. You could build. I typically like to go Lethality into Camille because she's normally not going to build a lot of resistances. Like the most she'll get is probably Steel Caps, and then from there you get Voltaic. She does say Steel Caps and Triforce components. It's winning for you. In late game you kind of just one-shot her with a Lethality build, but you can go Bruiser as well, and build HP, which will counteract her true damage, and then at least good duels as well. It's kind of personal preference. Teemo. Oh, Teemo's interesting as well. I would say skill. Teemo's not the greatest right now, and you match it pretty well into him if you go Electrocute. Electrocute second wind. It's not bad. It really isn't at all. I think there's not a whole lot to say about this one. Just try not to take too many autos early game. Like if you're going for minions, you can sacrifice CS in this lane just to stay high HP. And then you just kind of outscale as the game goes on. He's really kind of not useful. Warwick's tough. I think Warwick spam ping. He's really hard to play into because if he holds Q onto you and you're dashing, he basically pretty much counteract one of your dashes and use that actually to get on you even harder and gap close twice as much as you normally would if you weren't dashing. And he tends to stack you when you're or he tends to hold Q on you when you're dashing. It's not good. He does a lot. It's just hard to deal with him as Ambessa. You have a lot of tools, and theoretically it shouldn't be a hard matchup, but I feel like in practicality when you're playing it, Warwick tends to be pretty oppressive. Next we have Olaf. Olaf's Ambessa favored. Olaf can't really stick to you as much as he needs to for most champions, because most champions don't have the same level of mobility that Ambessa does, but Ambessa has the tools and mobility to keep Olaf off of her, which leads to favorable situations because you can do, your combo and he maybe gets a couple autos, but he needs way more with his lifesteal to stick and really create a good situation for him. The biggest thing for Olaf, and also like with the champion like Darius, is you cannot be close to their tower. You want to stay at least, you can be a little past midpoint in the lane, but you cannot be past 70 near. You can't be hugging their tower. You're gonna get ghosted down. So that's kind of with most ghost champions. You just don't want to, like with Warwick as well. Like you don't want to give them too much space to run you down because you're dead. Tom Kench, Ambessa favored for sure. He does a lot of damage early game, but it's also very avoidable for you. You stay behind minions, you don't get by Q. You can kite out most. You can't let yourself get hit by the W, which is that dash he does. You have the tools to deal with him. It shouldn't be too hard of a matchup. He can be a little annoying with jungle, and then obviously don't stay too close to his tower with a wave under it because he can RU, and that can lead to a bad situation. It's pretty simple to play against Tahm Kench's Ambessa, honestly. And you can, for builds, I like to go Eclipse into him, Eclipse Bruiser, but you can go Lethality as well. Tryndamere actually, Tryndamere's skill. What I like to do in this lane is go Electrocute, Flash, Ignite, and he'll probably also go like Halo Blades Ignite or PTA Ignite, and he'll play, or Lethal Tempo sometimes. He'll kind of E into you level 1 or level 2, and you just want to make sure you don't take too many autos. And if you can kite out his autos and get an electrocute combo off, it's really good. It's a really good situation for you, and it makes the game super winnable. As far as builds go, I would probably go Lethality, but you can also go Bruiser as well. I just feel like Bruiser, you're not going to be able to... honestly, it's up to you. I like to go Lethality in general for Ambessa. I tend to go Lethality pretty often because it has more solo carry potential and solo queue, but you can also go Bruiser as well. Bruiser's fine. Briar. So I've played against Briar maybe a couple times in top. I think it's a skill. I think it's a Ambessa favorite, honestly. It's a pretty easy matchup. Your W can counteract her bite. You can also dash out of her E, so it's really not anything too crazy. Or the W, the push ability, you're pretty easy. You're able to dash out of that pretty easily. She does have a lot of damage with PTA Ignite, but I think you should be able to win this lane pretty easily. You can kind of go whatever runes you want, and there's not really any specific counterplay tips. I just say play around bone plating. I would go bone plating this lane. Play around bone plating timer, and same with like Tryndamere earlier, and kind of a lot of champions here. Bone plating is going to be really crucial for you because it enables very good trading for you if you go Electrocute. Like you basically take less damage and deal a lot of damage in a short burst, and then you get out of there with dashes. So it enables a good situation. I think Briar is pretty easy. It's a Ambessa favorite. Jax. Jax is definitely a Ambessa favorite as well. It can be another situation like Darius, like Olaf, where if you give him too much space and he gets 2 Qs off on you and he's able to stick, it'd be really bad for you. But I think generally you're able to kite out his E with dashes. You have a lot of burst damage. You also have the ability to play around jungle in this lane, so his 1v1. Like Jax is a champion that wants to stick on you, just like Olaf, just like Darius. And Ambessa is a champion that's really good at denying that. So that's why Jax it's definitely Ambessa favorite. But it can still be a bad situation because he has a lot of burst damage as well once he gets ult. With W Ignite, he has a lot of magic, a lot of AD, or AP, but I still think it's Ambessa favorite for sure. Kled. Kled's an interesting one as well. This matchup can be pretty bad. If he gets his Q off on you, it's definitely going to create a really bad situation for you, and you'll probably lose lane. You'll probably die a lot. This is a matchup where you really can't let him EQ you. If he hits EQ and he sticks it, and you don't have dashes, and you have to play around your CDs in this lane, you always have to have dashes up so that he can't EQ you into you. And if you're hooked, you're just dead. Like the damage in the pool, it's horrendous. So I'd say as long as you play around your cooldowns, play around bone plating, this matchup should be pretty easy. But again, like don't give him too much space. I would probably put it Ambessa favorite. I think it's Ambessa favorite. Aatrox. Aatrox is one you're gonna play a lot. This one, Aatrox is interesting. I think Aatrox is probably skill. Nah, I think right now Aatrox is really strong. Right now with the Q buffs, I think he's really strong. I'd probably put him in spam ping. He's in a really strong state right now. I think he's a tough matchup for Ambessa. He used to be a lot weaker, and I'd probably put him in skill. But right now in the current meta, I think he's spam ping. Singe. So Singe is just like Aatrox, where he's really strong right now, especially in higher elos. He's pretty oppressive, and he used to never be that way. But typically you won't see as many proxy Singe as you used to. They have the ability with how strong they are to actually play lane. Now, Singe by no means is still a good champion into Ambessa, and I think I would put him in Ambessa favored actually, because overall like, you can pretty much go whatever runes you want, and you're still gonna have a pretty good situation into Singed. Cho'Gath. Cho'Gath actually, I would put Cho'Gath in skill. It's a champion, he's a tank, so you would think he would be Ambessa favored. But Cho'Gath has a lot of tools with his silence to be able to actually get damage onto you, and he does like a lot more than I would say most tanks, and it's a lot faster with Hail of Blades ease. I think Cho'Gath is definitely a skill matchup because you can end up losing this lane pretty easily if you fuck up, you get hit by Q. You're just kind of you're not focused, you're not locked in. You'll get hit by W, or get hit by Q, E, Hail of Blades combo into Ignite R, or even no Ignite and just die by R. It's not good. Cho'Gath can create pretty favorable duels into you, and that's if you're not focused, that's something you can't avoid. Mundo's free. Mundo's a really easy matchup. I don't think you should really ever be losing this lane unless you really make a stake or you get camped. I think this matchup, you can go pretty much whatever runes you want. You can go whatever. You can go Lethality's pretty good because he's not going to build a lot of armor. He's going to stack HP. So you can go Lethality into this lane, and it turns out to be pretty. I think it's just you're queuing max HP damage. It shreds him even through late game. Irelia. Ooh, Irelia is a really hard matchup. This is one of the ones I struggle with the most. I would say Irelia's Ornny, because you would think it wouldn't be too bad because you can kite out. It's like what I said earlier about champions beat up a stick, right? Irelia is that one champion that you play as Ambessa that she can still stick even through all your dashes. Just like, kind of like Warwick, but even to a further extent. Even way further than Yasuo. Like if she holds her E's, if she plays well with her Q's, and you walk up too far into wave, if you go past midpoint and wave, you're dead. Like you can't play into Irelia. She has way too much DPS and way too much stick potential, and even that exponentially increases once she gets R. It's really hard to play into her, and I end up dying 1v1 quite a lot to Ambessa. Unless you get fed early or play a jungle gank, it's a really hard matchup for me. And I think Ambessa in general, it's one of her worst matchups top lane, and that's through my experience. But I also believe that could be applied universally because I've played hundreds and hundreds of games in Ambessa at Masters Plus, and I think Irelia is one of the worst matchups from Ambessa top. Gangplank's interesting. Gangplank is not a great matchup, but it's not horrible either. I would put it skill. This is very kind of game dependent. It depends on a lot of factors. You know, what runes he goes. If he goes Ignite, if he goes TP. I would say that you don't want to be too aggressive in the Gangplank because you can punish that pretty easily with sitting under a barrel. If you're not confident in destroying barrels, then you're going to take a lot of damage, and then you're going to get Q spammed, and you're pretty much out of lane. So you just be careful. I would say probably Electrocute TP. Play a little safer, but you can still go for trades every now and then, especially if he does have orange. Alawi. Alawi is not hard at all. You really shouldn't let yourself get hit by E in this lane. If you do get hit by E, it's a pretty horrible lane. That's kind of if any champion into Alawi, but I think it's more favorable for Ambessa because of the dashes. You have the ability to kind of play around it, and then even if you do get hit by E, you can still dash out of the E range pretty quickly before you take a lot of damage. I would say this is a free. This Alawi is pretty easy. I don't think you should really be struggling into this lane. It's not bad at all. What else we got? Trundle. So you're not gonna see Karma a lot. I'm not gonna rank her. Trundle. Trundle's Ambessa favored. It's another one of those champions where he kind of just wants to force all in. He's a sustained damage champion. He wants to stick on you. But Ambessa, you do have the power to deny that. It shouldn't be too unfavorable for you. You should be able to play around Trundle pretty easily. Just use your dashes, kite out. If you do get hit by pillar, it's no big deal. I would just say probably save your W for the pillar whenever he uses pillar, because he's gonna walk up and Q you. You W the Q and you get out of the pillar range. It's not too bad at all. Next we have Xin Zhao. So Xin Zhao is a flux matchup for Ambessa because you used to never see him, but now with the AP build, you do see him a lot. But then it also got changed again. So now I really don't see him top lane very much. But I would say even in whatever state of meta Xin Zhao is, it's always going to be a pretty skill-based champion, a pretty skill-based matchup for Ambessa. You do have the damage to kind of chunk him out a lot, and then he also is another champion that wants to stick on you. But he doesn't quite have the sticking potential that a Warwick, Yasuo, or Irelia would. So I think it's a pretty favorable matchup for Ambessa overall. But you can still definitely lose this lane if he goes like crazy or aggressive, Hail Blades Ignite or something like that, and you don't have the cooldowns to play around it. Next we have Swain. Swain's another one of those range matchups where it's just kind of a scaling fest, kind of like Gnar. But I think Swain's a little bit easier than Gnar. He doesn't have the damage that Gnar does or the capability to stick or slow as much. He does have E, but you shouldn't really be letting yourself get hit by E, and That's kind of the only situation where this would be bad, is if you get by E, you're instantly W'd. And then it's kind of a bad situation, but I think Swain's to be pretty easily. I think he's the best of favored. Not gonna see Caitlyn. Ornn. So Ornn's definitely free. I don't think you should ever really be losing a lane versus Ornn. It's definitely one you could go even a lot into, but you outscale definitely into late game. The biggest things with Ornn is you could go Ignite, you could go TP. It doesn't really matter. The biggest thing is playing into his abilities. So you cannot be close to his pillars, and even if you are, you can kind of bait. If you're higher level, you can stand next to his pillars to bait an E and then dash out, playing off the animation. But generally, if you're lower elo and you just want a simpler guide to Ornn, I would just not be close to his pillars. And then the crucial thing with Ornn is his W is straightforward. It's a straightforward breath. It's like a 180-degree arc. So you need a dash out of the W. As soon as you see W going, or you know you're gonna get hit by it, dash out of it. But even if you do and you know you're gonna get hit, immediately W. You want to save your W for the brittle proc. If you can W any brittle proc, it creates a really good situation for you. But generally, as long as you don't fall into a CC combo with E and R and Q, you should be okay. Because you can W his brittle damage and then dodge his brittle as well if you dodge the W. So it turns out to be a pretty good situation. And honestly, you're just pretty good in the tanks. Ornn shouldn't really have too much of a good time into you. Malphite. Okay, Malphite, I know I just said Ambessa's good in the tanks, but Malphite is a pretty rough one. I think I wouldn't put spam ping jungle, but it's definitely a skill, and Malphite is a lot harder than it seems. Because with his shield, that's the biggest thing. His shield gives him enough durability to sustain. You aren't able to chunk him out as easily as you would other tanks, because he also builds armor, and armor into Ambessa is really good early game, and that's where it's crucial, is the early game lane. And Malphite does have the burst to be able to chunk you out and either force you out of lane or play around with the jungle gank with R. What you absolutely have to do in this lane is go grasp, go heal, go full like kind of tank build with second wind overgrowth. You could go D shield. I would probably still go D blade, and I would just play off short trades with grasp. I wouldn't want to overextend into him, because with W's and E and Q's, he has enough damage to really chunk you out and force a bad situation for you. But overall, I think it's a lot worse I think he's probably one of the worst out of all the tanks besides Poppy, which we'll get into later. But it's still definitely playable. It's not anything that's too crazy. Let's see. Maokai. Maokai is the best of favorite. I would actually say free. Maokai's not hard at all. You're not going to see him very often, and even when you do, it shouldn't be hard laner. I'm not going to go too crazy into Maokai. You're not going to see him very often, and it should be a pretty free matchup. Not a whole lot of like counterplay here. Just probably W is Q. You should be okay. Renekton's orny into traffic. Everyone knows Renekton's like the #1 counter into Ambessa, and it's true. Renekton is horrific to play as Ambessa. He does a ridiculous amount of damage. His W obviously breaks your shield, which creates horrible situations. His R pretty much gives him an instant free counterplay button, where even if you get him low, you can still win. He's good into your jungle as well. He can 2v1 pretty easily, or excuse me, 1v2. He's just oppressive, and you do outscale really hard. But even into late game, he'll still shred you, because you play off shield so much, and that's his money. That's his bread and butter. Urgot is also pretty hard. I would say spam ping. Actually, it depends. It all depends on Urgot E. If you get hit by E, it's immediately over. But if you cannot play the E and you're good enough, if you can dodge the E, it turns into a really favorable matchup. And you do outscale really hard. But his Black Cleaver, Urgot Black Cleaver spike is one of the hardest spikes in the entire game as far as item spikes go. So it can definitely lead to a really bad 1v1 situation for you. I would say in the current meta, I would say skill, but this is definitely top of skill. Like, really, this is on the border. This is really close to spam ping. Yeah, if you get hit by an E flash or just a naked E, and you're just basically dead, because he immediately hits R into ignite. His W is going on you. You're fucked. But if you play a little bit later, you can still win. But also watch out for his one item Black Cleaver spike, because it's really impressive. But yeah, it's still a matchup that you can definitely win. I don't think it's quite as bad as these ones up here. Next we have Wukong. Wukong is a matchup that you don't see very often, but when you do, it's not too bad. I would put it somewhere in the middle of skill. Probably easier than these. I would probably put it around here with Tryndamere and Cho'Gath. It's definitely one you can kite out his W, you can kite out his Q, you can kind of get him off you because he wants to stick, and it's pretty easy for you to get off of him. You can do a good amount of damage to him, but it's also hard to kill with his passive and his W's. He has a lot of tools to kind of dodge your damage and get out. So it's kind of a matchup that typically you're just going to see kind of scale into late game and then go from there. But as far as lane goes, it's nothing too crazy. He does have a pretty strong level 1 with E-Ignite, but you should be able to dash out of that and take care of that pretty easily. Next we have Vayne. I would say Vayne is between skill and spam ping. I don't think Vayne's quite as bad as like Forest would be for Ambessa, but Vayne can definitely still be problematic. I would probably put her in spam ping. I would put her on par with Yasuo in spam ping. I think these three are pretty representative of like the harder ranged matchups into Ambessa. They're both really good laners, and they also have the ability to zone you and kite you off wave, or zone you off wave. So they're pretty effective. I think Vayne is actually not as bad as you think. You can definitely trade into her if she Qs into you and waste a Q. If she wastes an E, you can also look to ultimate on her. So it's definitely a lane you still have counterplay for. Rumble is really hard. It's definitely not favorable. I think it's bottom of spam ping. I think it's probably easier than these. It's definitely easier than the rest of these. I think it's bottom of spam ping, but it's definitely harder than these matchups. Rumble's a really strong, always been a really strong top laner, and with Flashing Knight, if he hits E's on you, it's a really bad situation for you. His ultimate's also really good because even if you get him low in a bad situation where you can kill him, he can ultimate the wave and then you have no pressure. So I'd say lower elos is probably skill, but in higher elos it's definitely spam ping, but bottom as spam ping. Cassiopeia is really hard. With her ground, her scream, or with her whatever like mist she throws, it's really hard. It grounds you. Which is like the bread and butter of Ambessa. Any champion that grounds Ambessa, like Poppy or Cassiopeia, it kind of ruins your gameplay. I think it's easier than Rumble. I don't think it's quite as bad as Rumble, but it's definitely up here because you still have the ability to dodge Qs without if she doesn't have mist on you. It's a pretty easy matchup to play. You just dodge Qs and kind of play for short trades. But if she does get mist on you, you kind of just have to press W, tank it, and try to get out before she does too much damage to you. And obviously play around the R, which is kind of a skill-based mechanic, but it's something you can be aware of before the game starts. Skarner's free. This champion he can't really kill you, and you have the ability to kill him with max HP damage and all that. It shouldn't be a matchup that's too crazy. It's kind of like Owen, kind of like Maokai, kind of like Mundo. It's just a matchup where you kind of just win through scaling. Heimerdinger's actually Heimerdinger and Best a favor. This matchup shouldn't be too crazy. He is really strong. He can zone you off waves with turrets. He can perma push into you. And it's definitely not by no means a fun lane to play, but it's definitely a lane that you still have gameplay into, and you can definitely kill him with jungle or even just solo with Electrocute Flashing Knight. You can force good trades on him if you get a lower damage, and then you have like an 80-90% kill. Like if he has 80-90% HP, you can still kill him with Flashing Knight Electrocute because he's just so squishy. But you're just gonna have to play a little safer, a little chiller, kind of give up CS, let him push into you, and then you can kind of go from there. But it shouldn't be a matchup where you're like going 0-10 or anything like that, like these other ones up here. Nasus is also free. Honestly, he can't really do anything to you early game. He can't kill you. What I would say is if you go even level 6, he has kill potential on you, but you really shouldn't be going even in this lane. You should be playing really aggressive. I would go at least Electrocute, but you could also go Ignite Electrocute, which would I recommend, and you kind of play lethality. You just completely one-shot him. You really need to deny him. Just deny him the game. You can proxy on him. I wouldn't proxy on him, but you could. You could maybe proxy one wave, but I wouldn't go too far. I wouldn't go third layer proxy. You can do second layer proxy, and then maybe look for under tower trades and force something with jungle, or even solo. You could probably kill him. But Nasus shouldn't be allowed to play the game pre-6 versus you, because you just completely dominate him. Udyr. Ooh, Udyr. Udyr is interesting. You don't play against him too much in top lane, but when you do, it's really hard to kill him. It's kind of just another matchup where you scale. I would put low Ambessa favored, because I don't think he really has the kill pressure on you, but also you aren't able to kill him with perma W, so I would definitely put it in Ambessa favored. Next we have Yone. Yone is going to be Ambessa favored as well. Unlike Yasuo, Yone can't stick to you as well, even with E and Q dashes, and you should be able to dash out of his Qs, or at least play around them enough to be able to W a Q, so you deny that Q damage. You force a good trade with E a Q, and then you back out. You shouldn't really be able to play it into you as well as Yasuo would, and it turns out to be a pretty easy matchup, especially if you go Ignite, Electrocute, and you play really hard early game with that kill pressure. You're able to force good trades on him and eventually kill him, or force him out of lane, get a good wave under tower, and you're in a good situation for the rest of the game. And he doesn't really build a lot of armor, so if you get lethality, it's pretty good situation for you. Next we have Poppy. Poppy's going to be Ornny. Poppy is quite literally one of the hardest Ambessa matchups for you, because all three of these are like different demons. Irelia can stick and do massive DPS. Renekton is massive DPS and also durable. Poppy is max durability, huge amounts of CC, and also pretty good damage. So she can solo kill you, she can play around her team really well. Like, Poppy is the one that denies you from playing around the rest of the team. Like, these two, at least, you still have gameplay into their team. Less so for Renekton, but more so for Irelia. But Poppy quite literally denies you the ability to play into the enemy team, which is what makes it so hard, because her W is always a menace throughout the entirety of the game, because it blocks your whole kit. And you can still play around this if you're a high-level Ambessa player, because you can not dash and just naked Q, naked W, naked E. But then she gets a free Q on you, and then she might get the second part of the Q, and it just is max damage with her passive. So I think this is quite literally one of the hardest champions. Any of these three, you could permaban and be really happy. Next, you have Gragas. Gragas is free. Gragas is really good. It's a pretty good matchup for Ambessa. You're able to dash out of his Q. You're able to dash. You can sometimes dash the E and dodge the E, but even if you get hit by the E, you can W the Q that'll eventually follow, or the W auto. So really play around your W here, deny a lot of his burst, and then he doesn't have the mana to sustain. And even once he gets Lost Chapter, by that point you already have Pickaxe, Longsword, and you can force really good trades on him, because you're scaling really hard as well, and you outscale. Next we have Vladimir. Vladimir is going to be Ambessa favored. It should be a pretty easy matchup. Vladimir doesn't have the damage to kill you early game, but you don't necessarily have the damage to kill him early game either, unless you force a lot of good Electrocute trades and you have Ignite. But even if you don't, you outscale. He doesn't really build a lot of armor, so your max HP damage will shred him, and you should be able to W his R. You can W his Q2. You have a lot of tools to play against him. Just play around his W cooldown. I wouldn't save your ult until he doesn't have W, unless you get a free kill. Pantheon. Pantheon's hard. Pantheon, I don't think he's quite as hard as Urgot. I think Pantheon's a little bit easier than Urgot, because if you force a trade on him with his E cooldown, if his E's down and you force a good trade, you get a really good trade off on him, and you're in a good situation. Pantheon does have a lot of. He's a very early game cheese champion versus you, because if he goes like PTA Ignite, he can force a kill level 1 over level 2, and then be in a good situation. But you do completely outscale him post 6. So this is a matchup where I think you don't want to be too crazy. I would probably go Bone Plating, Electrocute, and maybe TP, and just play for lane. I'd try to get a wave in a tower and then cheater recall or something like that. You just don't want to give him too much prio, because then he's able to free Q you and then force good trades and then eventually kill you. So I would probably put him around Volibear level, but definitely like a harder skill matchup. It's still definitely one that requires you to play well and him to play well. Mordekaiser's free. This champion, it's another one just like Olaf, just like Darius, but Mordekaiser's even worse than those two, because he doesn't have as many sticking tools as they do. You should be able to dodge out of his E. You can do quite a bit of damage to him, and then you can also ultimate his R, or even pre-R. If we're talking pre-6, it's just completely winning for you, especially if you go Ignite. I would just play around his W cooldown. Don't let his W stack up too much, and just like any of these like sticky, early game aggressive brute like fighter champions, you don't want to be too close to his tower, which that'll be the only situation where he has the ability to kill you. As long as you're close to your tower, you have the space to be able to dash out and get to safety. Yorick is also a pretty good matchup for Ambessa. I would put Yorick in Ambessa favored. He's a little bit harder. I would put him in higher in Ambessa favored actually. I think I put him probably top of Ambessa favored. Yorick's pretty hard. Definitely not a skill matchup. I think it's still Ambessa favored, but it's kind of on that border there, because his Q with Grasp is it's a lot of damage early game. So I would say tips for a Yorick matchup is I would either go Electrocute or Grasp. I would say one of those two. I would W his Q, force a good trade, and then save your dashes for his cage. If you get hit by the cage in this matchup, you're screwed. You cannot dash out of it, so you would have to sit there and auto it, and then you take way too much damage, and you're in a bad situation. So I would say just play really short trades, like maybe just a Q1E or something like that, Q1E auto, and save your Q2 and W for either his Q and then his cage, so you don't get hit by it. But if you do, it's really bad, because him and his ghouls will fuck you up. Next we have Akali. Akali's one that's pre-6 is pretty good for you, but post-6 she just completely wins the 1v1. I'd put her in scale. If you win pre-hard pre-6, you can get into a situation where you're fed enough to deny the post-6 skill pressure that she has on you. But if you play even or you lose, it's oppressive, like completely oppressive, and you won't have a chance to come back in the game because post-6 she just completely wins the 1v1 totally. I would put her probably around Fiora level. I think she's not as hard as Pantheon, but she's around Fiora level as far as how difficult the matchup is. Next we have Kennen. Kennen's one you're going to see a lot in high elo. He's not as hard as like these 3 top laners. I think these 3 range top are a lot harder than Kennen. I think he's probably around Rise level. I think he's harder than Rise, but around this level. He doesn't do as much damage as these 3. He can stick, but he just doesn't have the capability to kill you as much as these 3. And typically you're just going to be able to kind of scale it. It's going to be hard to force a kill on him, but also it's hard for him to kill you. So it should be a matchup where you kind of just play neutral. And it should be a pretty good situation late game. Garen's really hard. His execute really does counter your entire ability to play the game. Any champion with executes, like missing HP executes like Garen, are going to be really hard for you. I'd put him around Warwick. I don't think he's quite as bad as these 3. You still have gameplay into Garen. But he's definitely a really difficult champion because if he gets one good trade on you with QE and he goes Belly Blade mode into Ignite R, it's just over. Like you really can't play into it. He's also really good with jungle if you get ganked and you don't have any capability to 1v2, because sometimes you do, but with Garen you don't. So yeah. Set is one that is really dependent on the skill level of the set. If he's a good set, it's pretty difficult because he knows his kill pressure, he knows his angles, and he'll be extremely aggressive, and it's really difficult to play into him. But if he's a more like passive set, it's definitely not bad at all. You do have a lot of tools in this matchup. You're able to dash out of his W unless you're E'd, but if you're E'd, you can also still press W after, and you have a timer there where you can block most of the W damage. But Set does also have a lot of just raw damage that can sometimes just overwhelm you. I would say Grasp, Bone Plating, play really safe. You can go Electrocute Ignite if you want. I wouldn't recommend it unless you're really confident. But this matchup, I would put it around. I think it's harder than Akali, right around Pantheon level. Set's a little tough to deal with because you quite literally you really can't walk up at all, and because you're gonna get insta E'd, you can play like a Q1 poke, a Q2 poke, but it's just not enough to really do what you need to in this lane, and a lot of times you just end up second force really good situation for the lane. But you can still get solo kills and still eventually win the game late game. So there's that. Lilia, you're not really gonna see as much. She used to be played, but not really. Gwen. So Gwen used to be really strong. Gwen's not in a great state right now. She used to be like probably up here with like Pantheon Volley, because she used to be not. Ambessa into Gwen now is pretty good. I'd say it's Ambessa favored. I would put it right around Darius. I think this is good. I think she's probably easier than Darius, but it kind of depends on what rune she goes. If she goes Flash Ignite, it's not too bad, but if she goes Ghost, it's actually a little harder because she's able to actually stick to you even through dashes. But I don't think she's very hard. Actually, I would not drop her even more. I think she's around Yone level. I don't think Gwen's very hard at all. She's just so weak right now. Yeah, there's not a whole lot to the matchup. Just don't play too close to her tower and you should be okay. But she's really weak right now. And Aurora is really tough. Aurora. She's actually pretty tough ranged. I don't think she's still as bad as these 3, but she's pretty tough. I'd put her actually next to Cassiopeia. I think she's spam ping. She's pretty tough right now. She's really strong. Not a whole lot of tips for her. If the Aurora's bad, you can force good trades and eventually kill her. But if the Aurora's good and she plays around her invisibility and her dashes, it's really hard to play into her. And she ends up killing you a lot. Next we have Cassante. Cassante is an interesting one. You do see this one a lot in high elo. It's normally like a lane that's neutral, because you don't have the damage to kill Cassante, and Cassante doesn't quite have the damage to kill you because you can kite out a lot of his abilities. You can play around his W, you never get hit by Q3, and you can also kite out all out, so even when he ults you can dash out. But also it's kind of hard to kill him unless he really fucks up and maybe dashes too much into you or wastes his all out W. I would put it probably, I think it's bottom of skill. I think it's pretty much as close to a 50-50 as you can get because it depends quite literally on the mechanics of these two champions because they're very high skill cap champions. So it can go either way, but I think yeah, I think this is a good spot for it right about here. Fiddlesticks you do see occasionally now. I've seen it pop up a lot more. It's pretty easy because you can kite out of his W. From the little experience that I have in it, I think it's Ambessa favored for sure. I put it around like Kane Zach level. I think it's good. It's in a good spot here. It's definitely not it's not a free matchup, but it's pretty easy. You just sometimes he does heal a lot off the W in the wave, so you don't necessarily have the KP to kill him. But he same. That's likewise goes for him. He doesn't have the damage to kill you either. Smolder you used to see a lot. You don't see him too much anymore. He's not great right now. I think it's Ambessa favored. I would put it somewhere around, I think Swain, or it's right around Swain levels of difficulty. He does have like the tools to kind of just poke you from range, which can be a little annoying, but you should be able to force, if you have enough ability to get on top of him, even with his E, force good trades and eventually kill him, and it should be a pretty easy matchup. Zahin. So Zahin's interesting. So I've been seeing Zahin pop up a lot more. There's a lot of cheese builds coming out with him, like Halo Blades, Ignite. But even without that, Zahin's honestly not the easiest. I think he's probably around a Kali level, but I think he's rising. I think Zahin players are getting a lot better, I've noticed. I think earlier on I would have said Zahin was probably Ambessa favorite, but nowadays I'd say he's probably up here in skill. And with these new builds coming out and the buffs coming out, you could probably move him up to close to like Urgot level. But I think right now he's about around a Cauliflower levels of difficulty, but definitely not the easiest lane. I think it could go either way for sure. Riven. Oh, Riven. This one's very flux. Historically, Riven's really good into Ambessa. You just have a lot more early game pressure. You're stronger early game versus Ambessa. And your CDs are also lower, so your Q comes back faster, and you can force good trades into her. But I think Ambessa players have also adapted to play the matchup better, from what I've seen, and the win percentage is stabilized over time. I don't think it's as good as it used to be. If you're playing into Ambessa and you pick a Riven, I don't think it's quite as good as it used to be. I would put it. I think she's probably harder than Urgot. I'd put her at bottom of spam ping. Riven's still historically always been a really strong champion, and I don't think that has changed at all. I just think we're a little bit better at playing into Riven, but I still think she's a really tough champion. Not quite to the level of like Garen or Yasuo or Renekton, nothing like up here, but I still think she's really strong. And actually, I'm gonna do this now. I'm gonna move Urgot to spam ping. I think Urgot deserves to be around here, like right around Riven level in spam ping. I think he's a step above these champions. Next we have Shen. So Shen, our final champion. So Shen. Shen's honestly not bad. It's sometimes hard. You do get hit by Z sometimes, and he does a lot of damage on you with empowered Qs. But I think it's free. Honestly, I don't think you should really be. Well, I think it's Ambessa favored. I think it's right around like Singe Kled level, where he does have some counterplay on you, and he can sometimes get like cheese kills on you if you're not playing like locked in or focused. But I think generally you should be winning this lane pretty often. But yeah, that's my Ambessa matchup tier list for season 16. Obviously subject to change. I would permaban one of these three champions every time you play the game, depending on personal preference. I like to permaban Renekton because he's the most played, but you can also kind of up to you. But as currently, I think this is a good representation of an Ambessa matchup tier list from a North American Masters Plus player with hundreds of games on Ambessa. So thank you guys for watching, and take care.